Hi, welcome to Bakes and Blenders. Today we're going to be going over some fantastic tips and tricks for getting dark buttercream colors. Specifically, I'm going to show you how to do black, red, and navy, but these tips can really work with any color. So let's get started. In the bowl of your stand mixer, add your pasteurized egg whites, your black powdered color, your black cocoa powder, and a little more than half of your powdered sugar. Whisk on a medium to medium high speed for several minutes. If you have any powdered sugar or cocoa powder stuck on the edge of your bowl after a minute, go ahead and pause your machine, scrape the bowl down to make sure everything gets well incorporated. Begin adding your butter 1 tablespoon at a time. I like to scrape the bowl down after I've finished adding each stick, just to make sure that everything is incorporating. Now this is what I call hybrid buttercream. It is a combination between a mock Swiss meringue buttercream and American buttercream, and I just love it. Powdered color needs to be mixed with some liquid before it's added to the rest of the buttercream, otherwise your color won't come out correct. So if you're not going to be doing a hybrid buttercream or one that uses egg whites, you're going to want to mix your powdered color with a little bit of vanilla, water, or alcohol before you combine it. Once all the butter has been added, continue to whip on a medium-high speed for another minute or two before switching over to the paddle attachment. Beat with the paddle attachment for another minute or two. Now we're going to add the vanilla, a few drops of the black gel color, and the remaining powdered sugar. Mix until combined. When you're making dark buttercream, it can have a bitter flavor to it. Using extra vanilla helps mask any bitterness that might be in your frosting. At this point, our buttercream is very dark, but it is not quite the pitch black that we're going for. So I'm going to take some buttercream out of the bowl and microwave it in 5 to 10 second bursts until it is nice and melty, but not super hot. Add your melty buttercream back to the bowl and mix until combined. It takes time for the color that you've added to your buttercream to develop, but heat is a great way to speed up that process and get that deep, dark buttercream. You'll find the recipes used in this video in the description box below. Our dark buttercream is coming along, but it is still not black enough, so I'm going to use my immersion blender. Using an immersion blender helps emulsify the color that we've added with the fats in our buttercream, and this is what helps give us a nice pitch black buttercream. I always do this step after I've added the warm melty buttercream to the rest of the batch because this makes the frosting much looser and easier to blend. Take your time working the immersion blender through all of the buttercream, wiggle it around, work your way through every last bit of it, and this process is going to take you several minutes. It's very important that you give dark buttercream time for the color to fully develop because it will get darker as it sits. I always make mine about 3 to 5 days before I need it. When I'm done making my frosting, I'll let it sit on the counter for about an hour covered, and then I'll put it in the fridge to sit until I'm ready to use it. It's been a few days. I've brought my buttercream back to room temperature and I'm ready to frost my cake with it. As you can see, this is pitch black buttercream, which is perfect for my son's solar system cake that we're doing for his birthday. Side note, if you'd like to know how I use acrylic cake discs to frost my cakes to get really nice sides and sharp edges, click on the link up above and down below in the description box. Now let's go over how to get a nice red buttercream. Red is a color that very quickly can turn bitter, so we want to use as little red coloring as possible, which means we're going to start off with a pink base for our buttercream. Now with gel colors, you definitely want to make sure you're using a high quality brand that is very pigmented. I personally use Chef Master, but AmeriColor is also another great brand. With your pink buttercream base, begin adding your red gel color about 5 drops at a time, mixing well after each to judge where your color is at. Once you're getting pretty close to red, you're going to want to remove about a cup of your red buttercream and again melt that in the microwave 5 to 10 second bursts until it is melty but not too hot. Mix that melty buttercream back into the rest of the bowl. Once it's combined, we're going to transfer it to another mixing bowl and get out our immersion blender. Just like with the black buttercream, we're going to use the immersion blender to help emulsify our food coloring with the butter in the buttercream. This is one of the best ways to deepen your buttercream color quickly. Now a little tip is if you feel like your color just isn't developing, that the immersion blender isn't getting the job done, look at the bottom of your immersion blender and you'll notice that the buttercream that is trapped up in the blade is going to look a lot darker than what's in your bowl, and that shows you that it is working. Just keep up the process. After a few days of letting the color develop in the fridge, I'm ready to pipe my cupcakes. Even after days of developing, the heat from my hand on the piping bag is going to develop that color even further, so it becomes this really beautiful red as I pipe my cupcakes. You can find links to the products that I've used in the description box below this video. To make navy buttercream, I'm going to be using Blueberry Master Elite powdered color. You'll want to add this with your egg whites because it does need that liquid to activate the color. Since I didn't know how much powdered color I was going to need, I started off by just adding a 1/16 of a teaspoon of the blueberry color. I ended up using an 1/8 of a teaspoon total, so I suggest adding that full amount at the beginning of the recipe because it is much more difficult to incorporate powdered colors later in this recipe. Once we're done making the buttercream, it's time to start focusing on getting that dark navy blue color. We'll do the microwave method and take out about a cup or so of frosting, melt it until it's melty but not super hot, and we're going to mix it back into our batch. This navy buttercream is a little bit darker, but it's still nowhere near where we want it to be. So this time we're going to use a food processor. Simply transfer your buttercream to the bowl of a food processor and start processing. Now this is kind of easier than immersion blender, however, I didn't particularly love this and I'm not entirely sure why. I will say my buttercream ended up being a little bit looser, so I don't know if it was over processed in the food processor. It does work, you can pipe with it, but I prefer using an immersion blender. Now, if you're like me and you did not add enough powdered color at the beginning of your recipe, this is an opportunity to try to incorporate more in. Combine a bit more of your powder color with just a tiny bit of water. Get that combined, add a scoop of buttercream and mix that in together, and then pour all of that, scoop it all into the food processor and continue to process. You will notice that it will get darker. Like all my dark colors, I made this navy buttercream a few days in advance, so I'm going to put it in the fridge and let the color develop even further before I start piping. This navy buttercream came out so beautiful. It is so deep, dark, and rich. I love it. Now these tips and tricks, like using time to allow your color to develop, heat from the microwave, your hand, your hot scraper to develop that color, blending your buttercream with an immersion blender or a food processor, and using either powdered color, gel color, or even both. All of these tips and techniques can be used on any type of buttercream. You will get different results with each, but just play around with these techniques that we've discussed and I'm sure you'll see great results. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial and that you now feel confident to make your own dark buttercream. If you did, you might enjoy some of my other cake and buttercream videos. Check out the playlist on your screen right now. I'll see you in the next one. Happy baking!